All right. Well, welcome everyone to the second My Career Story. We're super excited to have our speaker here today. He was able to come in at the last hour and be available for us this month, so we're extremely excited. I have heard this man speak once before at a small business summit over at the venue here on campus, and I wrote down so many quotes from the things that he had said. He's such a good speaker. And I remember one of the quotes that really stuck out was, he said, "It's not who knows you, or it's not who you know, it's who knows you and how they know you." And so that one really stuck out to me. So I had to write it down really quick, but wonderful speaker. We're super excited to have him. So I'm just going to give a brief intro and then we will get started. Armando Salgado's life as an entrepreneur and community service advocate began with the recognition of the point where the Spanish-speaking, English-speaking communities intersected and the need for Latino leadership was missing. He launched LingoDocs Marketing in 2006 to bridge both business communities, providing a variety of traditional marketing services, such as publishing the only bilingual magazine in Omaha. Armando is also the founder of USMEX Express, which provides domestic and international shipping services. Armando has over 15 years of experience in the real estate business, owning and managing a property company and a construction business. Armando earned a double major in international studies in Spanish from the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and is also an adjunct instructor at Metro Community College, teaching business and construction to small business owners in both English and Spanish. Over 190 Latino-owned companies have formed with Armando's help in the past 5 years, which is amazing. Armando furthers his mission at breaking down barriers and promoting business, language, and cultural awareness, and doing community service through various community organizations, and holds several board positions, including Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, One World Community Health Center, Heartland Workforce Solutions, College of St. Mary, Futuro Latino Fund, Business Ethics Alliance Trustee, Criminal Justice Advisory, Latino Economic Development Council, and Cinco de Mayo Festival, among others. Busy guy. Armando was born in Mexico, together with his mother and father, migrated to the US at the age of 6, and as many Latino families, they worked and contributed to the US society to earn their piece of the American dream. And just a little tidbit, we ask our speakers before they come on if they would like an introduction song to kind of hype them up, hype the crowd. And we learned that Armando used to be a boxer, which is amazing, fun fact. And he's also a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan. So we're gonna cue it up, everyone. Armando's.
How's everybody doing today? All right, so I am a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. We're 6-0 right now, by the way. Any Cowboy fans out there listening? Hope you heard that. Again, thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor, to talk about oneself. I think it's one of those things where you can talk a little bit, and hopefully somebody listens about your experiences and what you did, and hopefully it helps others. And I do the same thing. I always love to go hear, the stories of other people that I can myself use in my own personal life. It's very important. It's actually one of the more enjoying things that I do, is learning more and more. You can never stop learning, right? And that quote, by the way, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? So I had to correct you on that one a little bit. So it's important to me that, I know a bunch of people, but does it matter? Does it matter that I know a million other people if they don't know me, right? So it's very important. I could say that I can pick out anybody off of my LinkedIn account and say, oh, I know that person. But does that person really know me? That's once they know you, I believe it's a lot easier for anybody to contact you or do business with you or be a part of your life or do whatever that situation is. So thank you very much for that intro. I'll talk a little bit about my personal life. I think kind of sets the stage for what has developed in my 42 years of life. That way everybody can kind of get a feel. I'm very proud to be of Mexican descent. I'm born in Mexico. I was raised in Mexico until the age of 6. I did come to the States when I was 2 years old, when I was a baby. I don't remember. My dad told my mother, "Hey, let's have a better life. Come to the United States," and I'll explain how we got up here. It wasn't first class, I'll tell you that. My mother was tricked. We lived in a small little town in the state of Guerrero, Mexico, which is down a southern state, and we lived up in the mountains pretty much in La Concordia, Guerrero, which is a very small, very small village. And I could say that pretty much half of 24th Street here in South Omaha is from that little town. There's like 10 other restaurants and businesses and whatever that come from that little small town. So I think that town had a very strong entrepreneurial spirit as it came to Omaha. My father lived in Chicago, actually, and told my mom after he had left that it was a lot easier up here. It was, you pretty much stick food in the box and it cooks it for you, and because we lived in a small adobe house. If you guys ever seen, any pictures or anything, adobe with the clay, maybe somebody here would understand what I'm talking about with dirt floors. We didn't have any, I remember it was like yesterday. I think I remember more when I was 6 years old than what I did last weekend. It was a microwave, what he was talking about. We didn't have microwaves. She didn't know what a microwave was. She had put food in there and she's waiting for it to cook. She didn't know how to work a microwave back when I was 6 years old. So, or 2 years old. So she went back, and my father stayed in the United States for 4 years until he came back down and get us. I remember it. It was very vivid when I saw my father come in to get us. I didn't know I had a father, to be honest with you. I don't remember having, growing up, with my mother in a very small town. And when he came to get us, it was just, it was like a saving grace. Like, we're gonna be saved. I was young enough, but I was pretty smart and thinking, way above my age. He arrived with zero cents in his pocket. He had nothing. Even to this day, I'm like, what were you doing in Chicago? What were you doing? So we had to do a what is called slash and burn. If you guys remember history, back up in the mountains, we planted crops, so corn and beans. And we had to plant them in wherever there was space between the rocks up in the mountains. It wasn't tractors or any fields, flat fields. It was, you had to walk up and down the mountains to plant corn. And my father and I we had to walk miles, about 4 to 5 miles up to the mountain, pretty much from our town up the mountain to plant. And I remember him just making the holes, and me behind him with my 2 little bags. Imagine a 6-year-old. My 9-year-old right now can't even do his bed, right? But walking behind him, putting in corn or beans wherever it needed it. The crops grew. We had to, of course, go back then and pick them. There's no irrigation. There's none of that. You depended on God to water the crops. Once they grew, we had to, of course, to take down all the the picking, and that's what we that was the money, that was the crops that we planted to pay a coyote, right, to cross us to United States. Okay, so that was the first experience of me coming to this country, is having to work so much to gather money, because he didn't have any money to pay the person that would take us to United States. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of things, of why and how and all that, but I'm very proud to be at this point, even everybody else that does that journey, has to feel some sort of proudness, at the same time becoming a good citizen of this country, and respecting as well. But I remember crossing through the border when we finally got enough funds to come up. It was just my mother, father, and myself. I'm an only child. And it was rough. I mean, it was one of those situations where you kind of see on the news now, or, I see a lot of the, those commercials with kids are not having any food, or homeless, or it was just really rough. My wife and I, now we talked about this yesterday, and we're talking about how, we're watching that series 1883. I'm not sure if anybody's seen it. And how, Eastern settlers went to the West, the United States, to settle. And they had, carriages, the horse carriages, and all their belongings. And I said, man, do you remember when we came to this country? I literally arrived in this country with a backpack. And I mean, my father was carrying the only backpack that we had. And it was, at that time, my parents were really great at making it seem like it was normal, right? It wasn't a tough thing. It was just part of life. I think themselves, they were already trained psychologically and emotionally to accept that was a part of life. There wasn't anything above that. And that made it normal for me. That normalized the things. I didn't realize this until I was old enough to really ask myself, am I gonna go through the same thing again like they did? And I'm talking about my teen years. So we crossed I remember crossing the desert the first time, crossing the river, and going through I didn't know how to swim. Still kind of don't know how to swim. My father was the only one who knew how to swim. My mother didn't know how to swim. So there was some very bad people on each side of the river. I remember that time where they were helping whoever didn't pay, charging them a lot of money to cross over. And my mother was the only one that took that ride. And I went on top of my father's shoulders and started swimming across the river. That was pretty, that was very, very scary. He slipped, or he fell. I fell in the river, and luckily he was able to pull me out and drag me to the other side. Drenched, I was completely drenched, wet, of course, as you could imagine. And it was, God is good, right? We can all agree that God is good all the time. And God was there at that moment where there was another boy my same age who they had enough, just one change of clothes. They took all my clothes off and changed my clothing, or else I would have probably died of hypothermia or something, because even though it's down south, the desert's really cold. So we started walking, and luckily we got caught. That was also saving grace, that if we wouldn't have got caught, we would have been out there, and I would have probably, most likely I would have passed away because of just shivering. I was completely cold. And I don't tell this story to scare, to start any political anything, but it's I believe that is everybody has a center nucleus belief of what drives them in their life, whatever it may be for you. That moment was for me. That moment was, even though I was 6 years old at that time, but remembering and being traumatized by it, I think even growing up was always remembering that one little moment that changed my entire life, right? It could either been really bad, it turned out to be really good. So we tried again, and it's back in 1986 was a little bit different than now. Now you can't do any of that stuff. It's a lot, from what I hear, it's a lot harder. We arrived at Washington State. Okay, I grew up in Washington State. They had promised my father, he had some family up there, a home, a house, and work. Okay, I mean, most immigrants will come up here. I'm going to say that the number one thing they want to do is just work, right? Take care of the family. I tell people, if you had children and if your life were wherever it may be wasn't that great, wouldn't you do whatever it took to take care of your family, to give your kids a better life? I mean, as a parent, I know I would, right? If it took me doing things that I'm not supposed to do for the betterment of my child, if we had no other options, you would do whatever it took. So we arrived in Washington State, and we arrived at a home where there was 16 other men. Okay. A 2-bedroom house with 16 other men. My dad arrives with his wife and his 6-year-old son. Okay. And they said, where is the housing that you promised me? And he said, you're going to take one of the rooms. So we were there various weeks. I remember, a couple months actually, before, things start getting really, really scary, right? After work or the drinking or whatever it would be. And I would see things and hear things that a 6-year-old, 7-year-old shouldn't be listening to. There was a small little hut, a block little house with the metal roofing that had a pump, a huge water pump inside that little, I'm going to say it was a 20 by 20 or, little, maybe a quarter of this room. And my dad's like, can I take that, please? I can't be here anymore. So we lived in that little shack for 2 years. Okay, but by a year and a half, 2 years. So you're talking about no AC in the summers, no heat in the winters. We had built a my dad built a fireplace and had one little window out that little shack. And we had to cut wood for heat, right? And I kept telling him, like, this sucks. Let's go back where we were at was way better than what we had now. Right. And every time I started school, thankfully, didn't know any English, of course, like any newcomer. And I learned English in about a good half a year. I mean, going to first grade, got into first grade and started picking it up right away. And I turned into the community translator, the interpreter for everybody. There is a lot of families, a lot of adults, and I started, being that representative, for the small little village that we were in. And I'm assuming I didn't do a great job at it. I mean, I was really young. So my parents, we worked in the fields. I lived in a hops farm. Anybody know what hops is? The little buds that they give the beer color and taste, right? If you drink a beer and it's like hoppy, we lived in like 100-acre farm on one side and about 100-acre farm or fields of grapes on the other side. So I could talk to you about beer and wine all day long if you want. I went to school, took the bus. I was the first one to be picked up and the last one to be dropped off. Because I was the farthest away from the town in Prosser, Washington. So that's southeast Washington State. Beautiful country, but it was horrible. I mean, parents work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And imagine having a son or kids all by themselves. You had to fend for yourself, feed yourself, clothe yourself. So I was first grade and said, okay, you got to get up. I had to get up with them at 4:30 in the morning and get dressed, right? And feed myself before the bus came. Okay. So it was very scary. I cried almost every day. Right. But I had a great father who toughened me up a little bit. And he said, it's a macho thing. I know it was, but that's the only thing he had back in the day. He said, los hombres no lloran, right? Men don't cry. And I'm like, oh man, okay. So when they would get home from work around 5, 6 in the afternoon, I'm splashing water in my eyes, right? And he's like, were you crying? I'm like, no, I had a bug in my eye. And I would walk away so they didn't see that I had teary eyes, my puffy eyes, right? So I had to make my own food, first grade, second grade, third grade. I had to do chores. I think thankfully that's what also kind of kept me busy and not go with the other kids that weren't doing very well as far as just a lot of trouble. Right? Leave kids alone and trouble starts. There's not a lot of supervision. And if there was supervision, it was the sister or the brother that was 2 years older or whatnot, and they're doing bad things. It was very in the summers, I worked on the hops field. I worked with my parents. They would take me to pick apples at like 5 in the morning. It was one of those things where you either helped, right? You either helped or you don't survive. I mean, it was that extreme. And there was a lot of competition. A lot of families that came in from California would go up during the seasons, right? And the people in Washington had to fight with the people from California coming in, pitching a tent under a tree, picking apples for, a month or whatnot, and then going back down. So you're talking about I was telling, my daughter yesterday, talking about today is, we had to, I remember saying, man, I don't want to fight, I don't want to fight. But you had to fight because all these families would come in and then another 10-year-old or 12-year-old or 15-year-old would come. And then you clash with the families. Parents are fighting, right? And then kids are fighting, and what do? I mean, you can't just, you have to. A lot of the things that I went through is not because we wanted to. It's so easy. It's easier said than done. To say, well, why can't you just go to Metro or why can't you just do it? Well, it's not that easy when you've been trained and when you're living a life where you don't know what you don't know. It's really hard to get out of that cycle. Even as a grown adult, imagine now a child. I'm going to say my business spirit grew in Washington State, where my mother had a heavy hand. Thankfully for her, she was the way she still is like that. She's 78 years old and she still thinks she can spank me, when she comes they live in Mexico now. They retired, thankfully, but they come visit. They stay a month or two. And my house is no longer my home. It's her house. If traditional Mexican women, they take over you. I mean, this is mine and get out of the way. But back in the day, she had to be the way that she had to be, or else I would not be speaking to you right now. You know, the gangs and you know, all the bad things that were happening. I could have easily taken a left turn. God, I think I did take those turns 100 times, but she dragged me back out of it. And I went to the mall one day and I asked for those Adidas sandals, you know, the sliders. I got his Foot Locker. I turned around. I said, Mom, can you buy me those? It's like $20, right? And she looked at me like, man, boy, are you crazy? You know, I'm like, we don't even have food. What, I'm like, what are we doing at the mall then? You know? And I'm like, come on, Mom, you know, like as a kid, come on, Mom. She turned around and time stood still. She slapped me. It was Foot Locker and the courtyard, the food courtyard. And I remember just her hand going slow motion across my face. And everybody turned around and I'm like, oh man, that was the worst, best thing that could ever happen to me. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to ask for anything, you know? And I mean, you're talking about a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, right? I mean, she had a very heavy, a little bit too much. But that moment on, I knew not to ask my parents for anything. I mean, food, clothing, I was wearing a pink coat for, you know, winter, riding a girl's bike just because that was given to us. There is no buying Armando anything. Christmas, missed us. You know, I mean, Santa Claus skipped over my house a bunch of times, but I did have one moment that my mom woke me up. She said, it was Christmas Day. She said, hey, I think I heard something outside, out in the living room. And I'm like, well, why don't you go check? I'm scared. You know, I'm like, why are you telling me to go check? And it's like, but go look. Okay. And I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but okay. And I said, we lived in a trailer at that moment. We moved into a trailer. And I said, Mom, I don't see anything. She's like, I think there's a bag folded in the kitchen counter. And I looked at it. I'm like, okay, I opened it and it was a Nintendo cartridge. Okay. A Nintendo game, right? So I'm like, my eyes was like, okay, this is the most beautiful thing in the world. Cause I wanted a Nintendo. I go up to her. I said, Mom, where's the Nintendo? Okay. And she looked at me and once I saw that face, I'm like, dang it, I messed up. I shouldn't have said anything. She thought that was the game. I mean, that was a cartridge, but I needed the console. Right. And I said, she's like, you know, it was a cuss word, every other word, but you know, she's just, my mom's tough. And she started like, what do you mean? That's not the game. You know, the day that I try is the day, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. It's not a big deal. We'll later on, we'll get it. It's not a problem. Okay. And she got mad. I'm like, I cried my eyes out for 2 days. And didn't have a Nintendo. Didn't have anybody else who had a Nintendo, so I could go play the game at their house. That was the only Christmas I ever had. That was the only Christmas I ever had as a kid. It was, you know, I think it was just easier for them to say, hey, he doesn't exist, right? Or Los Reyes Magos, which is the three kings, right? In Mexico, that was the thing. And not so much Christmas. When you come to the United States, and now it's Christmas, big Santa Claus guy, right? It was part of life, right? Working out in the fields, getting up early. You know, I would go into the fields and say, okay, I can't ask for Mom for no Nintendo, can't ask for no sandals, can't ask for anything. I'm wearing a pink coat, you know, to school, people making fun of me. And I said, I got to do something about it. I remember being about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old. And I learned how to do the little Mexican names, the bracelets with your name on it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen those. And I learned how to do those, and I would go up to you and I'm like, hey, what's your name? Right? You're like, Nicole. All right. Nice to meet you, Nicole. And I would go with my bag of yarn, right, and make the bracelets. And I would sit in the corner and I would just make a bracelet and it would say Nicole on it. Sometimes I spell it wrong. I'm like, here you go, Nicole, it's $5. And Nicole's like, what are you talking about? I didn't buy them. And who's going to say no to a little kid? I'm like, Nicole, that's what I asked your name for. Right? I thought we had a thing and I took advantage of that. And I'm like, heck yeah, this is awesome, man. I would go around the fields until everybody caught on. I'm like, don't buy anything from that kid. Then I said, okay, how else can I make some money? I started picking up cans because there's a lot of people drinking. Not a lot of the different houses. There's like a lot of the guys drinking, and cartón de 24, right? They always show up with their 24 pack. And I'm just sitting there like, all right, picking the cans. I would go with the garbage bag on my bike around, just picking cans up, take them to the place where they weigh them and give you money. And I'm like, huh. So the more they weigh, the more money I get. Not should I pick more? I'm like, what should I do? I started putting dirt inside the cans and flatten them out and never got caught. I remember, I'm like, this is awesome, right? Of course, you couldn't tell mom that I had money. She would take it, right? I'm like, come on, mom, So that's what like, I believe is fending for yourself. What started me in my business career is, okay, you got to earn your own. You got to work and build your own. I arrived in Omaha in 1996. My parents, we got kicked out of the ranch that we lived in because my mother slapped the foreman for a good reason. They would ask incoming immigrants. My parents, if you know my parents, they're both warriors. They stand up for their people. They help out, even their little town they're living now. They're building the clinic, so a doctor can come in once a week. The school, Mother's Day, they're the ones doing there. They did a Christmas theme thing for the entire community. I mean, they continue to give back. And, as these immigrants would come in, the foreman or the manager of the ranch would charge them $100 to give them work. Right? So imagine, I'm like, I'm here to work. Well, give me paid to work instead of me paying you for the work. So my mom, being the way that she is, they would all go to my mother to say, Doña Joaquina, can you please help us? She wasn't scared. The foreman said something wrong and she went at him. Okay. And that's how we got kicked out. I had an uncle here in Omaha. I said, come to Omaha. And I had across like a half a mile away, there was an older couple that had an RV. And I said, hey, do you guys we're moving. I got 3 options to go to. They're leaving it up to me. I was 14 years old. Leaving it up to a 14-year-old to pick where we want to live is probably not the smartest thing. But in this case, it turned out to be great. I had Chicago. We had a bunch of family in Chicago. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to get away from gangs. I know I'm going to go into another thing. So no, don't do that. Las Vegas. And the only thing I could think of was I can't gamble. I'm not 21 years old. And I said, what's Omaha, Nebraska? And the whole time I was picturing Eskimos and igloos. Because Alaska, I'm like, Nebraska, 2 different things, right? But that's all I pictured. So how, if it can get me away from all of this, I don't care where it is. If it's under an igloo, I don't care. So I asked this couple, have you guys ever driven through Nebraska? They're like, yeah, there's nothing but cornfields. I'm like, hops, cornfields, same thing. Let's go. Went down to Mexico. Mother stayed behind. Father and I got, crossed and got the Greyhound. My parents became residents at that moment through the Reagan amnesty. So they love Reagan. I showed up Woke up from the Greyhound bus station downtown, if you guys remember it. I stepped out and I saw the Woodman Tower and I'm like, Dad, I told you I didn't want to go to Chicago. And he's like, no, we're in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm like, oh my God, dude, I was freaking out. I was so scared. I don't know what, I mean, I was tough, but I was like a wimp at the same time. You know, I lived on 33rd and Dodge, my dad and I in a 1-bedroom apartment, right in a little brown building. All the Midtown crossing wasn't there at all. It was all just a parking lot or grass. Went to Central High School, go Eagles. And in 1999 was my senior year. My parents decided that their goal is to see me graduate from high school. Okay, that was their goal. Is ya cumplimos. I would always remember ya cumplimos. Like we've accomplished our goal to see you graduate from high school, right? So a year before graduation day, I must say a good 9 months before, they say, hey, we're gonna go back to Mexico to fix up the house or whatever, and we'll come back and get you. So 17 years old, and my parents decided to leave. So I lived alone the majority of my senior year in high school. I was really, I wasn't that scared anymore, but it was fun. It was really fun. I did throw a party here and there just to pay the rent, but that was neither here nor there. They did arrive. I crossed the stage, graduation stage, and I said, here you go. You've accomplished your dream. And I didn't know what to do at that moment. Luckily, I had applied for UNO, one of those recruiters that come and get you, or come and sell you their university, right? Different high schools. And I applied. I took the ACT test. I remember a girlfriend of mine said, hey, are you not going to take it? I'm like, for what? Nobody's telling me. No counselors were telling me. Parents weren't. They didn't know anything about it. Okay. My parents went to one parent-teacher conference in my entire school career, my entire school life. And that's because I forced them to, at Central High School, my favorite teacher, Mr. Martin, English teacher, I'm like, you got to meet this man. You got to come see him. Okay. Took the ACT, got a good grade. Had the acceptance letter from UNO. I worked at California Tacos, 33rd in California, for about 2-3 years and saved up about $3,200 exact. Showed up first day of classes, fall of 1999. I'm looking for those recruiters at UNO. Okay. I finally found them. I said, I'm not sure if they still do this in high schools, but you have to go to homeroom to go get your schedule. Right. I'm not sure if they still do that or not, but I found them and I said, hey, her name is Melissa Science. Melissa, where can I find my homeroom to go get my schedule? Okay. And of course they laughed, smiled, thought I was joking. Once they started smiling, I knew I messed up. Right. And I felt so embarrassed. I said, you know, I'm sorry. Nobody ever told me. Nobody in my family has gone. I was first. I'm first. No, I was the first to go to college. Now I've been pushing my nephews and nieces to go to college now. But Miss Annette Crowder, I'm not sure if you guys know who she is. I'm telling you, God is good. He puts people in situations in your life to help you in the perfect moments. They said, how much do you have a scholarship? Are you registered for classes? I'm like, that's what I came here to do on first day of classes. They're like, oh my God. Do you have any money? I pulled out my wad of cash, right? $3,200. And they're like, oh, it was getting worse and worse. And they said, what do you want to do? I'm like, what's your goal? What's your dream? What do you I said, I want to be a child psychologist. I was gung-ho about being a child psychologist so I could help other Latino kids that went through all the trauma that I went through. And by the way, that crossing, I did it 4 times. Every 2 years, my parents wanted to go back and restart hell again. Every 2 years. That was unbelievable. I still am like, what were you guys thinking? I get one time you made it, but why would you want to do that to your son, to your family every 2 years at the beginning? And so I wanted to help others. I want to help other kids. They went to the back and came out with a scholarship application. And they said, here, fill this out real fast. I looked at him like, I have to write a 15-page paper. I'm like, I have to go to work. I have a full-time job. I got to go to work. And Ms. Annette Crowder, she's like, damn it, just fill it out. And while I was filling it out, I don't know what they were talking about, but there was 2 angels in that room, right? That helped me out. They gave me a scholarship right there, plus my $1,300, signed up for classes, Psychology 101 and English and Chicano Latino studies. I remember taking that was the first year they had that at UNO and some other class. And I had a full schedule. Went to the registrar's office, paid for classes, and I went crying to my first class. I mean, I was bawling. I didn't see any other Hispanic people around me. I was alone. I was afraid. And God just kept pushing me to my first class where I met others that looked like me and had similar experiences, I think. I applied for a million other scholarships, and I would actually get refund checks afterwards. I had a full ride to UNO after that second semester, and the Goodrich Scholarship, awesome. They just it was 50-year anniversary this year, and many other scholarships. I had a full ride to UCLA through this other program, but I could not leave my parents behind. Okay, so I stayed in Omaha. It was just tuition, no room and board. I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work. My parents were going to leave, like the plan was, and I said, hey, can you please stay 4 years? Just 4 years. I need your support. I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody's telling me what to do. And I guess it was my fault for not asking either, but they're like, no, we're done. We're done. We're going back to Mexico. We're not ever coming back. I'm like, well, I gotta stay. I can't, this is my home. I don't know what I'm gonna do in Mexico. What are we gonna do? Go plant crops up in the mountain again? And I said, why don't we buy a house? My goal was like, all right, how can I keep them in the States? So let's buy a house. And that was my first serious business situation that has still been going on to this day. They said, no, we've never had a house. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. My bed was in the living room, and they took the small little bedroom, the one that I stayed behind. I drove around the TAC building, the OPS TAC building, and there was a sign that said for sale right on 30th and Nicholas, 29th and Nicholas. And I called it. I said, hey, I'm interested in buying this house. No clue what I was doing. Shows up, we're like, okay, I'll meet you in 2 hours. Shows up, the realtor shows up and he says, where's your parents at? I had just turned 18 years old. And I said, it's me. It's just me. My parents are not going to buy anything. And he's like, and I told him my story, why I was doing that. He's like, you know what? Doesn't hurt to try. Called one of his mortgage buddies, $57,000 later, I get a house. And I didn't, they gave me the thing, I closed it. I closed on it. I had a little refund check from UNO, and I used that as a down payment. I don't even still know how that happened, to be honest with you, but I had a house. And I took my parents before they left, about 2 weeks before, said, hey, can you come see this? Okay. And I opened the door. I said, this is your guys' house. I bought a house for you. And they're like, You know, they were surprised at the same time. They're like, this is a joke. Did you rent this damn house? What'd you do? I'm like, no, I bought this house. This is our house. I don't know how I did it, but this is our house. My father, I remember saying, it's like, what he said, este hijo se va a echar a perder su vida. He's like, he's going to mess up his life. And I'm like, how am I? Because of buying a house. And so I blackmailed my parents to stay in the States, you know, by making them feel bad that I was going to mess up my life. Right. And I was I'm like, yes, I'm going to mess up my life if you don't stay. Right. All you have to pay is half of the rent, and I'll pay the other half. Okay. And just stay here for 4 years. And that's how I started learning construction. So I did my own flooring and siding. It was like this, the first wall, everything else was good. Roofing, I had a roofer teach me how to roof. Man, that house was beautiful. I mean, it was a small little 3-bedroom house, but it was a mansion to us. I still drive by. I'm going to actually drive by on the way back downtown. I pass by and I see it's two houses down on 30th. And it's a push. It's a motivation for me, right? I still want to go knock on the door and be like, hey, can I come see your house and look at it? I sold it later on and made a good amount of money. And that's how my parents went back to Mexico. So we sold it. Here's all this equity. And that's how they retired. So that was very easy. I did about a month later, or about 6 months later, I called the realtor. I said, that was so easy. Let's do it again. And I had a duplex. I had two other duplexes afterwards, all while I was going through UNO. And people just kept giving me money. I don't know why they would keep giving me money. And that's why the market crashed in 2008, right? Because of people like me, but I took advantage of that. I didn't know what was happening at that moment, but I knew something was wrong. And before it exploded, I was going to try to get as much as I could. I was thinking that. I don't know what's going on, but something's about to go down. So let me get as much as I can before it goes down. Okay. And I don't know if that was smart or that's the reason why the economy went down. But during UNO, I had an idea because I rented to families right on 33rd and Davenport or Cass. There's this little small park called Gifford Park. And I had a duplex there. My first duplex, I rented it. I put for rent, no calls. I'm freaking out because I had to pay the mortgage. I don't have any more money. So I put hablo español. Okay. And then bam, bam, bam. I had a bunch of calls. I said, I'll take the first one that comes. I don't care who he or she is. It was a Hispanic family. I had a rental document that was like 15 pages long. I remember them saying, okay, here you go. You have to sign this. And they just signed it. And me, you know, I love to joke around. Well, thank you for your car titles. And they try to snatch it back out of my hand. I'm like, I'm just joking. Okay. You have to learn, you have to read, you have to educate yourself. Because if I was truly a bad person, I would have taken advantage of you. But I also need you to know that you can't have 20 people and 5 pit bulls in this 2 little bedroom apartment. Right. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I should translate all these documents. And I called it lingo, the real estate lingo and docs, short for documents. LingoDocs. That's how LingoDocs started from that situation. I was at the UNO library studying for a test, and that's when it popped in my head. After I graduated, I worked in nonprofits. I worked for the Boy Scouts. I was never a scout, but I did all the grant writing. I ran the Scout Reach program, which is North and South Omaha. No parents, I'm gonna say 1 or 2 parents of the entire 2 communities would show up to any of the scouting events, right? In Mexico, scouting is for the rich people, right? So they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go camping. I'm like, I already went camp. I lived in a camp. I'm not gonna go camping. So I would volunteer to take, you know, African-American kids, Hispanic kids, and refugee from Somalia, and another kid. right? 23-year-old, 24-year-old, taking all these kids out to camp. Nobody knows how to camp. I don't know how to camp. They don't know how to camp. Shows up, everybody was just, it was fun. It was beautiful. So I did that for 5 years. I went to work for another nonprofit for another 5 years. And while I was still doing all my real estate buying and fixing and renting, that's what I did. Then I said, I have this idea. Let's take LingoDocs to the next level. I want to do a Spanish real estate magazine. It was called Se Vende Se Renta Real Estate Magazine. Okay. And right at 2008, 2007, 2008 time, when the market crashed, nobody would buy advertising in a Spanish real estate magazine. Right. And the population wasn't as big here in Omaha, Hispanic wise, as it is now. So I had to change it up really fast. Said, what do Latinos like? Like, we like to party, we like to have fun. So I called it Vida Social Magazine. So I changed the magazine's name right away, which is Social Life Magazine. Okay. And that still exists to this point. I added marketing under LingoDocs, and I would sell a house to get into the printing business so I can print my own magazine. Went into the signage business because I needed signage for the properties and for the other realtors that were buying these documents from me. I started selling those pre-translated documents. At this point now, we do apparel, screen printing, embroidery, websites, graphic design, translation services, of course, a virtual assistant service, and so on and so forth. In the magazine, of course, there's all these different services under LingoDocs Marketing. My wife is a realtor. When we were dating, I'm like, can you get your license so we stop paying the realtor the commission and we'll just keep the commission? Okay. And she's like, I hate real estate. I don't want to do it. She loves it now. And now she's still my go-to realtor if you guys, anybody need to buy a house or sell a house. We've built our real estate business, together, and it's pretty nice size at this point. I started my construction business about 4 years ago. When I started teaching I teach at Metro. So when I started teaching at Metro, I said, I know how to do construction like myself with my own hands, but there's a difference between doing construction and running a construction business. Right. And so the idea of me doing this business was to have the real life feel of what these men and women that I'm teaching and what they have to go through. I don't want to teach the theory. I want to teach the practice because they don't have time to know the theory. They have to use it the next day. And that's why I started it. And as a test, hey, I know what you have to go through because I'm going through it right now. Business is business at the end of the day, but the construction business is a little bit different, like every other business is. It's still running. I didn't know it was going to be as big as it is now. And I mean, it's not a huge company, but it's definitely way bigger than I thought it would be at that moment. LingoDocs takes turns, takes downturns, like every business goes up and down, hopefully on an upward bound, momentum. But during the winter times, it slows down a little bit. Nobody who's buying a sign, to put outside in cold, freezing cold here in Nebraska. COVID hit, right? I lost a lot of my advertisers in the magazine. And years ago, I said, what can I do? 8 years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do so I can continue getting the same revenue throughout the downturns? And I started USMEX Express, which is a shipping service. And people are like, what do you mean? Like UPS, just a lot smaller, a lot smaller. So I can pick up your box in New York, LA, or 75 North, tomorrow and take it to grandma in Mexico in 2 weeks at the top of the mountain. Okay. And we're now nationwide. I have a call center in Central America, in El Salvador and in Costa Rica, where if you call LingoDocs today to get a hold of me, nobody in the States answers. Right? So they know the process, but I've been doing that about a good 9 years. All my web designers, graphic designers, my customer service, sales team, everything, it's all in Central America. Because I could not find bilingual, right? When I started LingoDocs, qualified bilingual people here in Omaha. And the qualified ones are being snatched up by bigger corporations. I couldn't compete with those salaries. So I had to think about how I can reduce my cost and make more gains. I really love teaching to my students. It's like me talking to my parents. Every time I go to class, the stories that you hear from them that they're currently going through right now, some of them are barely making enough money to pay the rent. I'm like, I know exactly what you feel like. And I sympathize with them. I understand you, and I start talking like them. I haven't lost. And I hope I never do. I hope that reality, I hope I don't lose that reality. I want to feel that, because that's what drives me. That's what gives me hunger to continue doing more and more. And I still got like 10 other plans I want to do. And I have no more time, but I still want to do them. And that class is definitely one of the things that drives me. Everybody needs to have a drive, whatever your motivation is, or a mentor that you can go to. I don't have that. I don't have a mentor. I don't have that person to be like, hey, I'm going through a tough situation. What can you help me? What should I do? I just go back to class and I see how tough a lot of these men and women have it. And all of a sudden it's so easy for me, right? It's all perspective. It's all different perspectives. How much time do we have left? Okay, I'll finish and I'll take any questions if anybody has. That went really quick. So I want to finish off. I still continue giving back. It's very important for me to give back, because if it wasn't for those that gave to me, I would not be here. There's a lot of different ways of giving back, and I hope everybody, there's several people here that I know that give back above and beyond your call of duty. I think that is very important for you. Pick one or pick 100 different things that you want to do, but as long as you give back, you're always going to be set God is going to be putting you in the right position for you to go to the next level, whatever you think that next level is for you. Right? I truly believe that. If you don't believe that, you need to find that in business or in just general life. I've taken a big business turn, but I usually say the more I can get, the more I can give. Okay. And that's true. That is very true. The more I can get, the more I can give. Okay. That's my life, my life's career. Any questions? I'll take some questions. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Yeah. Yes, my mother had 6 other children with another marriage, but I'm the only child. Yeah, which was good and bad. So yeah, I had to fend for myself. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do wish I had more, but it didn't happen. They tried actually, but it couldn't happen. Yeah.
So I mentioned you've got a few ideas early in your head for the burgers. Is there anything you can let us know? Or anything that might be coming up?
Yeah, actually, I've the business ones. There's a couple different ones. There's a coffee shop, on the way. There's no coffee shops in South Omaha. All right. There, every time we meet, the stakeholders or whatever want to meet about South Omaha, we don't ever meet in South Omaha, right? We always meet in, where do we meet at? I don't know where we meet at. We meet outside of South Omaha, right? You have a coffee shop here, right? And there's a couple in North Omaha. There's none in South Omaha. There's meeting spaces, I would say, but there's not a space where like, hey, let's go grab some coffee in South O. So that's one that I would love to do. The other one is the course that I do. Every city that I've been to in the United States has the same or similar struggle or situation that Omaha has in the construction field. The big giants, Kiewits and Turners and Hawkins, you know, that are so big and all this power and money. And then you got the Hispanic construction, but they, for some reason, can't connect, right? They're like, where do we find them? I'm like, what are you talking about? Just, they're right here, you know? But they have I don't know if they want to find them. That could be it, that they don't want to find them, but they, even here in town, I still get asked the question, hey, we need the extra workforce like everybody else does at these times. Where can we find them? Like, I have a whole list of them. Oh, cool. Can you help us? Right? So having this course nationwide, maybe on a virtual setting, would be, not that there's no other courses around the United States, there's a million of them probably, but I would love, I think mine's, I'm being biased, of course. I think mine's really great. It's popular. It fills up without any advertising. It's on referral. There's a waiting list. I don't fit in the room that I'm in anymore. I have to get a bigger room because there's a waiting list. I can't fit you anymore. So I'm sure that exists across the nation with other in the same similar settings. So I would love to grow that even more. Yep. Emily, any online questions? No?
I don't have a question, more of a comment, because I'm not gonna take complete on you. My family was
Yeah.
traveling out of the state, so.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our parents, my parents, especially the girls, right?
Yeah.
You're waiting in the truck.
Yeah.
So let me catch you out of the truck.
Yeah.
And you come back from lunch with Peter, and then they go back, and my cousins and my brother was going to be looking at my cousins would go, and they would be fighting for territory to work.
Pretty much. Pretty much. You got the parents and the kids going at it. And I guess you just don't understand it unless you were in that situation. It's really hard to explain that, but yeah.
And you go over that tree, right? And you don't move, so that you would kind of move forward and continue on the road. But like you sit right here and you sit in the archery.
Yeah.
So that there's someone like my back, but they plant like the kids, like don't move.
Yeah.
If somebody comes and yell at them, their parents.
Parents start fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, after everything, you know, the travel, the trauma, you know, the loneliness, it's made you who you are today. Is there anything you would go back and change?
Yeah, actually, there's the psychological trauma that I'm told, I don't think I think I'm a traditional Mexican, just because I was raised by hardcore traditional Mexican. My parents, by the way, my father came into the Bracero program back when he was 17, 18 years old into the States, when the States opened up the borders because there was enough workers. So he was 17 years old when he came to the States. He is 80 years old. This man does not speak English. Isn't that crazy? I mean, good and bad, because I became a good interpreter, but my mother both have second grade educations, elementary school, before they stopped working. So I was just told the mental health is, you guys have been hearing this, that's like a new fad right now. I don't know if it's a fad, but it's a real reality. I would go back and tell mom, dad, we need to become a little closer loving wise. So at least the situations that you went through weren't like, you don't speak about it. You don't talk about it. I couldn't go to my mom and be like, Mom, I feel like crap because I'm going through all of this trauma. Even to this day, it's really hard to go up to her and be like, if it does, 3 seconds later, we'll be bawling, we'll be crying, right? We just don't talk about it. So I would go back and talk about it. My father has released a little bit, right? He has, the hug and a kiss. No hugs and kisses. There's no, you toughen up. And that's been psychologically ingrained in our brain that mom, dad, son do not show love like that. So I would, and of course, it's never too late. And it's like, it's so hard. It's really hard to change, the psychological component of a human when when it's been ingrained in very tough situations for many years. People don't get that. I'm like, I know. For me to go to my mom and give her a hug in the cheek is only when she leaves, and it's kind of like a little pass by, like, okay, that never happened. Right? Because that's, oh God, I would change that. I think I would be a stronger person if that was available for me. But it started by them, and I know I have to change it for my kids. I at least know that, and I am changing it. You don't go to sleep, you don't go to school without giving me a kiss. Yeah.
We have a question from the chat. Also to hear the story, any advice to people nervous to start a business? Armando makes it seem so easy.
It's definitely not easy. I'll tell you that. It's you don't know. I mean, you kind of see, you guys have seen it on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and all that. People talk about all the successes, but they don't ever talk about any of the struggles that it takes to run a business or to a successful business. First, you have to focus on your business. If you're not focusing on your business, it's always I tell my students, you're going to be a hamster business, right? What's the hamster business? You're in your nice little cozy, cage, going around in wheels, and many people are just happy to be moving, right? And working, and they get a little check and they deposit the little check and their check account says a positive, right? But you're never changing the level in business. You always got to go up. If you're the type of person that says, I'm fine where I'm at right now, you're flatlining. And I hear that all the time by small business owners. I'm fine where I'm at right now. I'm good. Well, then you're going to start dying. Your business is going to start dying. You should always think of how you can go to the next level, whatever percentage or dollar amount or customer, how many more customers, et cetera, et cetera. You should always go up. Okay. And if you see your business going down, you have to react and I treat my business as if they were my babies. My wife hates this, right? I have two kids, right? But I say I have 3. Okay. And when my third child, which is the one that feeds everybody, gets sick, I react, right? And I drop everything, just like I would react for my, skin and bones child gets sick and has to go to the ER or whatever. I would drop the entire world to make sure that they are well. So that focus. If you're moonlighting, like you got a full-time job and then you're doing business on the side, make sure that you understand that once those two meet, right? If you're working full-time and then you're doing your business, and at the level of time or commitment or money meet and they're equal, you have to make a decision to let one of them go. Okay? Because you can't do everything. You cannot, or find somebody to run it for you while you continue your 9-to-5 job, right? you focus on it 100%, it will feed you. Question?
Well, my question was going to be, I know you have lots of businesses, but who in this community helped support you when you were getting started? And because you started with so many businesses, who have you turned to for guidance, for resources? I know it's different times now, it's different financial climates. I wish I would have done on that whole thing for the last session. But can you talk a little bit about that? Do you utilize the community or statewide resources?
Unfortunately, I did not. I don't, not because they didn't exist. I guess I was too, I wasn't smart enough, I guess, to ask, or I was maybe a little, I hesitated. I did take a couple courses, kind of like the ones I do. And I believe that was what helped me, like SCORE, retired CEOs and whatnot. I remember taking a two-day course of 4 different classes that talked about the realities of business, right? And it scared the living lights out of me. I'm like, we got to do what? Taxes and payroll and insurance and the management portion of it, and all these extra things that you had to deal with, the legal component, the registration, you know, everything and anything that you had to. And I've said, no way, business is not for me. I'll just continue doing what I'm doing the way that I've been doing it. But that was going to convert me into that hamster business. So I started the course in Spanish, the course that I teach at Metro. I'm gonna say that it is in Spanish. It's 100% Spanish, and it's business related. I mean, any type of business can go through it, but it's geared more toward the construction business. I do a 4-class course in English, and that's that course that they no longer do those courses there. But there's other organizations now, like what's the Enterprise Fund has theirs, you know, Chamber probably has a bunch of courses. There's a lot of courses out, and I would highly recommend you take every single one of them. And so you can pick and choose, right, the goods and the bads of all the different little courses. If you don't have time to go to a university and have a 4-year business degree, right? But even then, that's the theory. A lot of these smaller courses that people that come talk to you by experience will talk to you about the practice of the business. And just don't be afraid to ask, like, what's the worst thing? What's the worst case scenario? I mean, I can tell you 100 of them. Because I did ask for help, all those 100 worst case scenarios happened to me, right? And I wish I would go back and ask a question and not be afraid to, or embarrassed to ask the question, and not seem like I'm Mr. Know-it-all, because I'm not. And I should have acted like it back when I started, and I would have been a lot better now. But, you know, things happen for a reason. So the English one, it's a entrepreneurship crash course. It's through Metro. Look, you know, if you want to take it, register, it's like $60. And the Spanish one is Academia de Contratistas y Negocios. It's the Business and Contractor Academy. It's been going on now for almost 8 years, 4 times a year on Wednesdays, 6 to 8 p.m. So two hours every Wednesday. I know it's been hundreds and hundreds. I mean, I've already passed the 1,000 mark as far as past students that I have taken it. I've passed 203 businesses now that I've helped develop, like actually sat down with them and write their articles, their registration, their licensing, their EIN numbers, their city licensing for permits, payroll, all the stuff that they have to do. It's like, you don't have options here. You have this one route that you have to do legally, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, small businesses won't take the route that they're supposed to take. And they get into a hole and legally and fines and a lot of bad stuff that happens. So hopefully through my course, that's fixing, at least they know what they're supposed to do and what not to do.
So you teach the English course?
Yep. There's other business courses at Metro, and your associates that you can do, but mine's a 4-class, in and out. This is what you're supposed to do. And my goal is to, I say this jokingly, is to scare you like I got scared, until you're ready to commit to a business. Because like I said, if you're not ready to commit or focus on it, it's going to be a lot harder for you. The English one, entrepreneurship crash course. It's literally, it's a crash course. Yeah.
Is that virtual?
No, it's in person. Right now, we are doing it at the Deuce Space on 72nd and Dodge on the 2nd level. I believe that will be changing because the library is moving over there and all that. They're right in that same building. So I don't know where we're going to be moving it to, but it will be listed on the website. Yeah. No more boxing for me. I do boxing. I do train still, but just to keep the gut down. But no, I boxed for 4 years. I'm not professionally, but competitively. I still have some of the bruises, the I can't breathe right because I got hit a couple times. But it was a great stress reliever. I highly recommend it. Do boxing, do mitts. If you do mitts for 5 minutes, you will know what I'm talking about.
Well, shall we give it out one more time?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Our next My Career Story will be Wednesday, November 16th. I believe it's the day here in this room, same time, same place. We'll be talking about some diversity, equity, inclusion topics. Feel free to stick around, question, grab some food. See you next time.